Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very special Saturday I've got Andre here from Astrology Alert. Hi, Andre. I've got Lori here from Way of Positive Change. And in the description I put, we're going to talk about politics and finance. And so I've got some questions we're kind of going to talk about that I'm curious about. I would love to hear what Lori and Andre have to say about these things. And then we can go to some questions in the chat and see what we come up with. But first I wanted to ask real quick, I'm going to kind of ask Andre, are there planets that are good for finance, bad for finance, and also astrological signs that tend to have positive finance things, because I just don't know anything about this, but I know that in tarot we have the pentacles, and so those are always the financial things. But what about the planets, Andre?
I would associate finance probably more with signs than with planets. Although, for example, in planets, a planet like Jupiter always helps to expand anything, including the financial realm, whereas say Saturn is more likely to reduce it. But in signs, the Taurus Scorpio axis is the financial axis, the polarity. Taurus is personal money, Scorpio is other people's money or collective money, and you get markets there like Taurus as securities, Scorpio as liquidity. And you could say, and that's just the thing around the eclipses, you could say that in a certain way, the recent period, including the one that just happened like yesterday, the eclipse across Taurus Scorpio, is a financial eclipse, in that eclipses don't just affect that day, but they affect the incoming weeks and the weeks after. And you could tie these two eclipses that we've had, because they were both in the Taurus Scorpio range, to what's been happening in the banking sector. With some problems there. So that's the answer, basically, that you see that in the broad sense of the signs, but then in a person's chart, it'll be the second eighth axis that points to that most explicitly. And then the other axis is 511, which is the reason being that in a chart, you get the 11th, for example, is money from career. So then it affects that. But the most clear interpretation is Taurus Scorpio, to answer your question around signs.
Okay. Oh, interesting. That's fascinating. And what about, and so Lori, I was going to ask you about the cards and finance. So if you were reading the cards, and if you were looking, what is the one or two cards that come up that tell you your finances look really good? Is there a particular card in the card deck that tells you that?
Sure. It would
almost always.
Yeah, like the 10 of Pentacles, which shows the elders, the middles, and the littles. And the elders having had made good financial decisions, a stable foundation, and passing on the wealth to the younger people.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's interesting. And what about the Ace of Pentacles when that comes up? What does that usually tell you?
The aces are beginning sparks, and the ace is very much a symbol of a seed in your hand, and where you would like to plant that seed money, the beginning, where you'd like to plant it, where you'd like to have it grow. It's an opportunity.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So that kind of leads us into the next question I have and I kind of wanted you guys to weigh in on. I'm not sure if you've weighed in on these yet on your own channels, but if we could look real quick at the debt ceiling, what do you think is going to go on with that? That's going to be, decided probably in the next month. I felt like it would go up to the wire, and then they would do what they're supposed to do. But what do you guys see about the debt ceiling?
I wanted to ask Andre that same question. Are there any planetary alignments with Jupiter and in Taurus? I know that Uranus is in Taurus, and that has a lot to do with the financial makeup of the land. But is there anything planetary alignments that are helpful for Biden and McCarthy to get in a huddle and come out with something good?
Well, Uranus has been in Taurus since 2018, so to pin it on that would be a little more tricky. But what is more relevant is Jupiter is going into Taurus right in the middle of this month as Mercury goes direct, also in Taurus. But I don't see anything in there that in any way favors McCarthy. Biden is fairly okay. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. McCarthy's is not good at all. McCarthy's situation is set to get into a big jam, any moment. So my sense has been that this whole thing with the debt ceiling is not a big deal. Yes, it's not the first time, by the way. We've heard this before. They take it pretty close, and then they to the date, and they solve it. But I would be amazed if it became this big crisis that people are afraid of. That's how I understand it.
Right. And what do you get about the debt ceiling, Lori, or can you look at it?
I've read on it twice, and
okay.
I get that very much the same understanding that you had, that it's right up to the wire. A lot of threats, a lot of word salad, threats, fear, and the media hyping everything up, and what if this, what if that, and then all of a sudden, right, it gets very close. I also felt that they may try to kick the can down the road just a smidgen to buy some more time, but that it would work itself out, that they would work something out.
Right. Okay. Because that kind of leads me to the next thing I wanted to touch on, which was what you kind of touched on, Andre, was McCarthy and Biden. Because looking at each of them, and I have kind of felt what you did, Andre, that McCarthy is on a downswing of some kind.
Yep.
that his I feel like, not that maybe he never had great judgment. I also feel like his decision-making skills are clouded and just not good right now. Like, he keeps making mistake after mistake after mistake, and it just seems like that's the way it's going. And Biden is kind of the opposite. He's actually, I think he's making a lot of pretty good decisions, lately. And so that's what you get, huh? That kind of McCarthy's on this kind of,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's in risky territory because he's on his Saturn return, and it's not an easy Saturn. It's in a really public place. I mean, I feel sorry for the guy because he, in a way, he's in the same jam as Trump's lawyer, that Takapina character. The judge said to him, "Oh, I understand what you're going through," because he has such an irascible client. So he has to make lemons with that, lemonade with those lemons, and they're really bad.
right.
And McCarthy is totally jammed because he has this unruly caucus with people wanting different things, and the MAGA crew and the whole bit. So he has to reach for unreachable things. And he's not particularly intelligent to begin with, in my opinion. I've never thought he was very smart. So that adds to it. But I think he's a lot more sensible than he's forced to act at this point. And it's not a winning position, because if they really push it really hard, they'll take the blame, because Biden will say, well, I don't know what's going on here. For one thing, the Orange Menace, he's on camera looking into the camera in 2019 saying that people should never use the debt ceiling as a
right.
as a negotiating tactic. So it's pretty hypocritical. And
right. And what about Biden? Do you see what do you see with him in the next while?
Biden's situation is not that bad. Biden's biggest risk was around the planets anyway, was when earlier in the year, remember that the records thing broke, and it looked really, really dicey at first because it was taking away the pressure on Trump and all that. But that passed as Saturn got out of Aquarius, because his planets are really late in Scorpio, so the very end of Saturn, right up to February, the end of February. Then, as soon as we got into March, it entered Pisces, and that from then, I mean, it's been up and down. It always is for the president, but I think it's been generally okay, for Biden. So
Right. Okay. Good. And what do you get, Lori, for that?
I have felt that McCarthy's power, he goes on his side. He tilts, and it blows up in his face. It's just going to be big.
Yeah.
It's going to be
wow.
a really big problem. He's gambled his whole way through this whole thing, and the wheel turns.
Right.
And then
Right.
Biden, let's see. He feels bullied a little bit, but I think he snaps back, and he has enough people on the team to pull together that they can strong arm McCarthy and the MAGAs and work on it. So I feel like Biden, of course, is the only one with a cool head and has common sense and logic and knowledge.
And you're right. You bring up a really good point that Biden he really does have a lot of good people around him. I mean, that was the thing we saw with Trump, right? Because he was horrible anyway, but then all these awful people around him that didn't know what they were doing either. Jared Kushner and all these, people that were just there to be there and kiss up to him. And so you got a whole crew that didn't know what they were doing. But I think, and you've got that again, right, in the House of Representatives with Marjorie Taylor Greene at the House, all these ridiculous people that are in it for themselves, tons of ego, don't have, like you said, Andre, don't have the smarts, kind of the, and also they're not good faith players. They're kind of, they're not doing things for the right reasons. So yeah, you've got all that, and it's so good. Okay. I'm glad we're on the same page with that. And then the last couple of things I had before we go to people's questions, what you guys get about the future of Social Security and Medicare. And I wondered, Andre, have you ever looked at those?
It's a difficult thing to look at, other than in the sort of the broader context of the, say, the U.S. chart, the
right,
planet cycles. But I don't see that as any major change in the near future. You're looking at least beyond the next election before any of that is considered. It's a third rail topic that you realize what's up when you notice that Trump is very pro Social Security, because he knows that speaking against it is suicide. And I mean, it's possible that down the road they'll have to make adjustments at some point, but I think it's just talk.
Yeah, I kind of got the same thing. I did feel like they would be that it might come up in the next in the election, that it might be a topic that comes up. But I didn't feel any huge changes in them, at least in the near future. I mean, long term, we may have to look at it, but in the near future, it does, to me, it seems pretty much solvent. And like you said, it's not really a topic, nobody really wants to touch it because it's such a bone of contention for, so many people. They don't want it touched. And so what do you get, Lori?
I think that it's here to stay. I think they're going to need to shore it up because it gets top heavy. I think there's a lot of activity in it over the next few years with the baby boomers, and there's a lot of money going out.
Okay.
But I think they make a motion to get together, to huddle, to regroup, and they analyze it, and they make good decisions to bring it up to where it needs to be so that everyone gets what they need, and I think they take care of it.
Okay. And then the last finance question I had was about the future of the big banks. And you alluded to this, Andre, talking about how the planets have had a little bit of they've kind of added to, I guess, the stress on this stuff going on with the bigger banks. But what are you seeing coming up for that?
It's another one that I think resolves itself. I don't see this affecting the big banks in anywhere near like what happened in 2008 or anything like that. I
Right.
think it's just an adjusting thing, and you already saw what happened. When these collapses happen, the bigger banks benefit. They just swallow the little banks and they grow
Right.
bigger. So then at some point they have to check them, but I don't see any big thing. The planets right now are not in a really threatening place. The way they were, for example, during the pandemic, there was a cluster of planets there, and that puts a lot of pressure. Or in 2008, there was a big shift. To me, it's just something that will resolve itself, and without much
Right.
downside.
I kind of got the same thing with they showed it kind of like chess pieces moving around a chessboard, that some things will shift and change, but that it will basically be the system we know. It will pretty much be the same thing, but like you said, the bigger banks coming in and gobbling up the littler banks and that kind of thing. The monopolies again, right? And what did you get, Lori?
There's a lot of shenanigans going on in some of those banks, especially the ones that have already had some mismanagement and a lot of things that aren't on the books. And I think it gets a little worse. There's some more shakeups coming. There's a few more that are unstable, that are fighting to keep their place. And I think they lose. But overall, I think, and that sets off a little anxiety, but then there's a tempering, and ultimately we get the judgment card again, that whatever needs to be done is done and taken care of and tempered and balanced out.
Right.
That's a little weird.
It is, yeah. And I think it is, it does cause anxiety for just regular people waiting to see what's going to happen with my bank or what's going to happen with my, with what's going on with me. But I think you're right. I think it does kind of shift around and change a little bit, but it's ultimately going to be okay. And then I had kind of a weird, I don't know if this is a political question or what this is, but I've had a lot of people asking me about AI. And I always get that AI it's going to be both good and bad. It's going to be, it can be a really positive thing. And I actually feel like people are going to be very, very creative with it, how it's used. And that it will be more benefit than negative, but some people are really, really freaked out by it, and I don't really get that kind of feeling about it. I kind of feel like it's kind of like the internet. The internet can be really, really have negative stuff on it. It can be really, really positive and very connecting and that kind of thing. But have you guys looked at AI in any way? I know, Andre, you've looked at Elon Musk and people like that, and but what do you guys get about AI, and are you concerned, or are you I don't know, what are your general ideas about AI, and what do you think?
Go ahead, Andre.
I would tie AI to the Pluto change into Aquarius, because Aquarius is an air sign, and it shifts the energy, to increase technology, increase, for example, power of corporations. All these tech corporations acquire more power, and also because you see this with planets when they move into a sign, it's not there fully yet. Pluto is in Aquarius only for a couple of months this year. Next year, it's in Aquarius most of the year. I think 8 out of 12 months, and then in 25 it enters permanently until 2042. So these are the big cycles where, for example, back in 2008, Pluto entering Capricorn, first there was Obama, which was a big breakthrough, but then slowly moved its way into the whole fascist thing because Capricorn is a sign of governments and institutions and so forth. But in Aquarius, it's shifting the energy, and that, I think that's one of the things that we're going to see is a lot more technology. And you can look back at the previous Pluto through Aquarius was the late 18th century, after the American Revolution, but before 1800. In those 20 years there, and that was a period of tremendous growth in society, new developments, and so forth. But people acquired more freedom, not less, as a result,
Right.
during that period. So that's the whole key, is to not get panicked and think we're all going to become, slaves of robots and
Right.
it's just so
Right.
extreme. Like, I mean, one of the things that you notice about the modern era is that, yeah, there's disinformation for sure, but there's a lot of information to it, and people that disinform get caught pretty quickly, and things
Mhm.
move fast and so forth. So if this were, say, if you bring in AI into the 1940s, that would have been really dangerous, because the way, information didn't flow at all, and then it would be hidden and so forth. And I've seen some of that
Right.
historical footage, and it's really scary what they were doing, because no one found out about it until many years later. Horrific things. But now it moves really quickly. So
Yeah.
I'm sure there'll be ups and downs. Things are never perfect, but I wouldn't be panicked about it.
It is really difficult to keep things under wraps the way they did, before we had the internet and everything. You're right. The information flow is just so it's not stoppable, really. And
Right.
and so, Lori, what do you say?
I agree with Andre. It's up and down. It's really
Right.
it's a lot to manage it,
Hmm.
and I feel like they're going to try to just allow some of it to come out a certain amount, and they just have to wait to see how it grows and how people utilize it. Uh, and I think people are sentimental about uh, change, and they want to hold on to some of things the way things used to be. So the change is a little difficult for people, and some people just don't. They're not really open to it. Um, it's very much a juggling act, and I think they're going to control exactly how much of it is used and how much gets dispersed and comes out at a time.
Right. Right. Interesting. And so this I just caught my eye as it was going past. Um, so Celtic Seer says, very interesting. The Sun and Mars are on the world axis today. Does that bode well for King Charles III's coronation? So that is interesting.
I'm not sure what the Sun and Mars are on the world axis.
I
Which
don't know.
axis is that?
That's your department. I'm like, I have no idea what that means.
Wasn't aware of that. I have to look that one
I
up.
don't know.
Maybe that's what's been affecting me. That's what
Have
it
you
is.
looked at King Charles? Have you looked at his what's coming up for him, or his reign?
Yeah, I actually took a peek today. I hadn't in a while. And because there are a lot of people, readers and others, they're not too positive about Prince Charles maybe not having the crown for very long and this kind of thing. My sense of his chart is that it does get complicated, but not right away. It's going to take a while, a minimum of a couple of years, and probably even longer, because he has planets that, and the ascendant too. The key thing in his chart, his his rising sign is known very precisely, and I know that it's accurate because it linked in a really spooky way to Diana's chart, and so I remember at the time realizing, yeah, this has got to be accurate. But that doesn't get triggered for a while. It takes more than 2 years
Oh,
for it to
interesting.
become something. So I wouldn't think right away that something bad would happen or anything like that. But down the road, it's possible that he experiences.
What is his rising sign?
This is Aquarius. Hold on, I was looking at that because that's where Pluto. No, sorry, it's Leo. So Pluto. So he's Leo, but then Pluto is right on the descendant angle in 3, 4, 5 years. Like it needs to get into Aquarius to the early degrees. It's barely at 0 now, just starting to get in there. So that'll take a while. Back then it was what had happened at the time? It had to do with it's actually a Jupiter transit, but it linked the Diana had was right on his marriage angle. Even though this is an example where you might think, okay, because someone's planet is on the marriage angle, it guarantees success, which it did not. It made for the marriage, and for children, but not for the marriage to last. Back then.
Oh, interesting.
You know.
So for him, so I've always seen him as his reign being short, but not meaning like probably a few years, I think, maybe about 5 years or something, 3 to 5 years, something like that. But I mean, and short in comparison, right, to his mother, who was there for, decades. But I felt like it would be pretty short, but that he would actually be really good, that he'd do a lot he'd like try to push things in the environment forward and be really, really supportive of that. And I felt like he might do some work on behalf of their healthcare program, the NSA program. And I also felt like he might fix some old relationships, like with places that they were, when they had the empire, and when they were throwing their weight around and did some awful things to certain, with Ireland and with India and things like, that things, I felt like he was going to try to right some wrongs in some way, whether it's give back artifacts or do something. I just felt like he was going to try to right some old wrongs. But I felt like he'd be pretty good. I felt like they'd look back on him being like, he was pretty good. And the only thing I felt was that William would be in kind of young, that he wouldn't be very old when he got into that position. But that's what I saw. What about you, Lori? What did you get?
I saw that. Well, of course, we know he's a big climate change advocate. Mm-hmm. He's quite passionate about it, and when a Scorpio is passionate, they're passionate. I being one of them.
I'm one too. That's very true.
I feel like he makes really good, sound financial decisions and helps Gen Z out a lot with some of his decisions, and I think there's overall a good approval rating for him. He wobbles a bit, but I think that he does pretty well.
And maybe it is that kind of low expectation from people that they end up kind of thinking he's pretty good, because I think right now they kind of think, oh, we don't like him or whatever. But I actually think they're going to end up kind of thinking he did a pretty good job. So,
yeah, I'm just looking here.
Yeah.
What it was that the Princess Diana situation in 1997, Uranus, which is I mean, if you get a machinery like a car crash, well, especially in her chart, because her situation was in the transportation part of the sign, so the chart, so that was perfect, alignment. But his degree, his degree of on the marriage angle is where her Jupiter was, which is a really good angle for a marriage partner. If someone's Jupiter is in your marriage angle, it's perfect, and yet it still didn't last. But Uranus landed there. They were actually already separated, so he had to be incredibly shocked by what happened there, even though they had separated and so forth, because that's what Uranus does. Uranus is the ruler of electricity, literally. So you get shocked, and when often in relationships, when a person experiences a Uranus transit and they're not totally aware of what's going on, they can be shocked through something that happens unexpectedly, and so that's what happened then. Yeah, but at the moment he's Moon in Taurus, very elevated, and that's where Jupiter is going through now. So this year, especially as we go into between May of 23, May of 24, that's elevated Jupiter. I mean, it's great. It's a really good period for him.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. So, okay, so we're kind of going to go to the chat, and Janice has a question for Andre. Have you looked at Nepal's future at all? So many communists have dug in there.
That is one that, I have no idea on Nepal. And it's ironic because Nepal, there are a lot of great astrologers in Nepal. They tie that to reincarnation. I mean, I saw this movie a few years ago called The Unmistaken Child, and they had this astrologer. They were trying to find this child who would be reincarnating a lama. And I don't know what he did, but he figured out a way to point them in some direction. I thought, what? I have no idea what he was doing. But I mean, it was accurate because they found this kid, and he recognized all his previous all the bell and the this and the that, and he knew the cave that he had been meditating in. It was a crazy movie, but yeah, I have no idea because the problem is with looking at countries is getting charts that are accurate. For example, I can't really find one for the Russia that vibrates properly. I keep seeing that the one that they had before the one that came prior to it comes from the early part of the 20th century, and then they had the 1990 change, 1989, the big change. That chart seems to be vibrating better than the one that should be the chart, which is when they started anew at that point, right? And that's typically what you look at is the new beginning, but the new one doesn't make any sense. Whereas, say, the U.S. chart vibrates really well. You can tell, that planets are shifting, even in cases of like progressions affect things days equal years. So you're looking at 240 days or 245 days after something, and yet it shows up in the US chart. So that's a chart I can trust. But with Nepal, I have no idea what to look at. If someone has something for me to look at,
I can understand
send it to me and I'll tell you what I see. It's like the CNN chart. If I knew, for example, I bet there is somewhere when CNN first aired a program. That's what I look at with Fox. And the Fox chart for when they first went live is really quite accurate because you can see why they're in so much trouble now. This is not over for Fox. They've got at least a year of major problems based on more financial problems, and they've lost ratings and so forth. And that chart to me seems accurate.
Yeah, I know. Happy days are here again. Yeah, and so yeah, for those of you who were before we came on, Lori had asked us to look at CNN, and I just got the bottoms is going to drop out. So that's kind of a big thing, but I just got that. I don't know why they said that, but there's something about the bottom dropping out.
Yeah, I wonder whether or not CNN. They had that ownership change, and I'm not sure why they're not able to compete properly with, say, MSNBC, because there's no point in my opinion, in joining, the MAGA cult, or to me that just seems makes no sense. Like I'm actually praying. One of the things that would be really good. I don't know if this is true, but I know that with Scorpio tends to get associated with truth, with the idea of saying it like it is, and Pluto is the natural co-ruler of Scorpio. Some astrologers disagree, but I've seen enough to be convinced that I think it is the natural co-ruler at minimum. And since Pluto is going into Aquarius, and Aquarius in the US chart links to the media environment because it's the third sign, you would hope both for the country and for media that truth would start to gain ascendancy and be more important, because it's just been scandalous how something like Fox can even exist. It's just beyond the pale. That they can do programs with just total garbage, like what Tucker Carlson was doing is just total cynicism. He knows better. I mean, you've seen this guy talk over the years. He knows he's making it up. But yet there it is, and you're brainwashing millions of people, which again is another amazing thing, but it's true. So you would hope that Pluto going into Aquarius for the next many years, hopefully truth will gain ascendancy, and then it could become more taboo to do these things, where you're making up things and lying, basically.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that's a really good point, that there may be something shifting as far as just, because this really has kind of built up, it seems, since the 90s. It's just kind of been this bubble, and it could be that it is bursting finally, and the truth may spill out. I'm getting with CNN. I'm getting something with the bottom falling out, and I feel like actually they may change hands again, and in not too long of a time. So what do you get, Lori? Did you look at CNN?
I had like a nauseated feeling when I thought about it. I thought they're just not in a good place. I didn't
Yeah.
feel that they were making good decisions and not in a good place.
Yeah. I'm with you there. There's something definitely going on. Mary, thank you. Mary Motto, thank you. I saw another question here. Oh, this one. And I didn't know if you looked at Kamala.
Mm-hmm.
Have you looked at Kamala, Andre?
I have, yeah. She, well, I haven't in a while, but I'll put it up. She's moving toward more responsibility. I would look at her chart as, to my mind, it's an indicator of the likelihood that that the Democrats win the 24 election.
Yeah.
That's one of the. I do that in astrology. The way I understand it, you get a better information if you compare multiple charts and get a sense of, the entire picture. Like, for example, something in astrology that an astrologer named Patrick Watson, he did some research and he picked up on this pattern that is true, that Saturn, when it goes through Aries, which it does every 30 years, connects with gun legislation. So that happens in 2025. Well, how are we going to get gun legislation if we have a Republican in the White House? That's not going to happen. So then your mind naturally thinks, okay, well, that's a marker that would indicate the likelihood of Democrats
being
in power. And
right.
In Kamala's situation, she's only now, and her chart is accurate. She's born in, people born in California, their time is known publicly. That's something California does. So she's October 2064, 9:28 p.m. So right now, and from here for the next 10 years are her actual professional years. She had not reached this point until now, right? And so that typically brings people into, matter of fact, there's Kevin McCarthy with the same pattern, except that in Kevin McCarthy's case, it's very complicated. He's also not too smart, and that adds to the problem. You've got two things happening. But you see that in his case, the elevated Saturn actually helped him to reach the heights, but elevated Saturns can also be catastrophically bad if you haven't, built the plan in a good way. People like Hitler, for example, experienced that major rise and horrific precipitous fall.
Right. Right.
Kamala's is gaining in
okay.
So, yeah.
Good. And just in this past, when I just did this past Thursday Night Live on this past Thursday, I finally kind of got that. I thought the Democrats are going to do really, really well in 2024. Yeah, so something may have shifted there, something may have changed, but all of a sudden it just felt like they're going to do really, really well. And I think, all of this stuff, I think they're just so not on this, they're so not on the same page as most of America, and they're still pushing it. It's like all of these states that are pushing these ridiculous abortion laws and all of the stuff they did in Tennessee. And it's just like they're just, again, doubling down on stuff nobody wants. And so by the time we get to 2024, who knows what they'll be doing by then. But I just feel like it is like this tremendous, just like, no, we don't want this and we're not going this direction. But what do you get, Lori, for
Kamala? There are people who have made up their mind about her and have been cold towards her, and even feel that sometimes she's cold and detached, very much in the swords energy. But she and Biden are sailing through the ruddy waters together, and he helps her, and I feel that she becomes the star.
Very interesting.
I like that. May it be so. I actually think she's a lot smarter than. I mean, if you listen, Kamala's a prosecutor. You know, a lot of it is because when you're in the political realm, it gets complicated. There's so many people want different things, but Kamala's really smart. I don't know why people do this thing about Kamala this and Kamala that. I would be totally comfortable with her as president.
Yeah,
Totally
I think
comfortable.
she'd be fantastic. And
Yeah.
but that's very interesting, Lori, that she kind of comes out on top, because I think I think that could be very, very true. Well, he's got her also very in charge of and involved in the abortion stuff, and I think that is going to be a huge, huge growing issue and concern for people. So, and as more and more stories come out about all of these people having to deal with these awful decisions having to make, and I think it's just going to get more and more, people will just be more, more and more involved and angrier about it. So yeah, okay.
Yeah, they need to replay when she questioned Bill Barr and cornered him.
Yeah.
They need to replay a few of those moments where she infer, when she really got him. Yeah, that was a big deal.
Yes. So somebody wants to know, Janice wants to know about Camilla, Charles's
I don't have a
lady friend, about her health. I've never looked at Camilla.
Prince Charles. Prince Charles' significant other.
I think she's July 17th, 1947. I think. What other Camilla could be in my database that is not her? It has to be her.
Yes, Camilla.
So let me see. Yeah, well, Camilla, with what I have here, she's got all these planets in Cancer, and they're in a health section. So I would say they're 20. When you get into the 2025, 2026, that's a little risky. If it develops into a health thing, you can't necessarily with charts say just because the health area gets triggered. But if you already hear that someone has something, ahead of that, those tend to be the worst astrology transits, when a person has a cluster somewhere and they're already getting something about that topic ahead of the transit, right? Okay. Because then you can kind of see it, okay, it's moving in that direction, and then it becomes really problematic. That's the case with Clarence Thomas. He's got some pretty serious health stuff coming up, and he's already had health events, so you start to get suspicious. And with what he's having to deal with, it probably isn't a good thing, because being under attack and being under stress usually doesn't go well with health, right? So it's kind of advance notice that things become more complicated. Has someone heard something about Camilla's health being a problem?
I haven't. I am getting something about her lungs, though. So I don't know if that's just something that's coming, or I don't know what this is, but I don't know if she ever smoked, or I don't know anything about her health, or I haven't heard anything, but I am getting something about her lungs, breathing in her lungs. So that might be corresponding too with what you just said, Andre, at some point. And what about you, Lori?
I've got cardiovascular and blood pressure issues.
Okay, so maybe that is.
But by the way, there's something really interesting here, that this is the thing where they're born in different years and different times, but their chart, it's like the grid you make what's rising. Mm-hmm. They have almost the exact same degree rising of Leo. That's I'm sure one of the reasons they feel so comfortable around one another, because
interesting.
That's a rare thing, to have the same degree and the same rising sign. even though they're different signs. But then, of course, her Cancer energy is a Scorpio, so that
Okay.
works really well with which by the way, so was Princess Diana was a Cancer as well. There you see the elements get together a lot. Like in that case, it's water. Water energy likes other water energy, and so
Right.
in a sense that repeated. But Kamala is really a Cancer because there's a lot of Cancer energy there, and in the 12th house, which is a little bit risky.
Okay. All right.
Any problems she has, I think, get handled okay, but she definitely has issues here. What I got.
That she definitely will have issues, or there is something coming. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let's see. I did see another question here. Somebody had kind of where is it? Sorry about this, you guys.
I mean, the question here about her health, and that's sort of, it's plausible, that it could be her, maybe, as a possibility if he steps down. Did you ever get any sense of what it might be that you've seen his reign being relatively short? Has it hit you what it would be that would cause him to leave?
I kind of felt like it was going to be his health.
Oh, his own health. Okay.
But that's what I think. But I mean, I could see him stepping down for her, probably, if it was her. But I kind of felt like it might be him. Yeah. So that's, yeah. So, I know what it was. Somebody had asked about the E. Jean Carroll case. So have you ever looked at her chart?
I have not,
okay.
But what I can tell you is that Trump's next week is really bad. And that's one of the reasons, I'm sure. Like, what else could it be? I mean, we already know that.
Right.
And what I read and what I hear is not looking good at all, because he didn't even show up, and what they presented was incredibly damaging. And God help him, the women on that jury, they're not going to help him at all with what they heard there.
Yeah.
Yeah. The man's it's incredible.
It's a pattern of behavior too, right? It's his pattern.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Not to mention that concurrent with all this, and it may even develop more next week, that whole thing about the fake collector, the guys flipping, now that Fonnie Willis has 8 or 9 of them that are taking immunity, that can't be good. So that's another factor. But I whatever it is, where Mars is going, he's got these planets in late Libra, and whenever anything hits those planets, he starts blowing a gasket and screaming, and usually because something is happening that he doesn't like. And that's exactly where Mars is going, as the next week starts, and it's there for about a week, 10 days.
Yeah, for her, I just got that she would be satisfied with the outcome. She would feel like, she had gotten what she wanted, or at least gotten something of what she wanted out of it. Thank you, Rondaroo. What have you looked at her, Lori?
Yes, and I feel that when they played, I asked how the jury felt yesterday, how they viewed Trump. And when they played his deposition, I felt that it moved 2 people that were more on Trump's side over to E. Jean Carroll's side. So they're willing to award her damages, and I feel that there's a settlement.
Okay. Oh, awesome.
By the way, I was wondering why the reason I didn't look at her chart is there's no time for her. There's no time or day. It just says.
Oh, really? Okay.
Elizabeth Jean Carroll, age 79, 80, 1943. So
okay, yeah, not enough there.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Like Jack Smith. I only have one chart, and it's pretty speculative because it's like nobody knows.
Yeah, he's a mystery. I don't even know if his name's Jack Smith, actually.
Right.
Who knows with that guy? So this may be one of our last ones, but Pete Buttigieg, have you guys looked at him? And I know he had some rough spots, with the trains and the thing, I always felt like he was just in the beginning, like he would be just kind of moving on up, he'd have just a great career. Actually, I just felt like he and his husband both, I felt like are going to have a lot of successes. But what do you guys get on Pete Buttigieg, and have you looked at him, Andre?
Well, I have a chart here, but I don't. It's got a 9 p.m. time, and whenever I haven't looked at a chart in a while, I'll think it's an actual time. If it's the time, if this is the correct time, then yeah, it's pretty good, especially going into the 24 season, because that's the summer of 24, which is when the election is being fought over, and then into the summer of 25 is really good. And no matter what, this must be his day. He's January 19, 1982. So he's a really late Capricorn, right at the very end of the sign. Okay. And that the year that he's in now, the Jupiter and Taurus year is really good too. So yeah, I would say this chart is in good shape. And with a trajectory, like when you look at this chart in comparison to Kamala's, it takes longer to get to the pinnacle. So my guess would be in later years when he has even more influence, like maybe in the next decade, that way. But in the meantime, he could still be in politics and doing really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what about you, Lori? Have you looked at, or can you look at Pete Buttigieg and see?
I just did. Awesome. I think, with the trains and the planes and the Southwest debacle, and then the Southwest debacle again. So I still feel like he has one more wobble coming as transportation. Okay. But I'm with Andre as far as he's making an investment in years to come, and I think he does well. I think he's going to do a side hustle too. I don't think it's just going to be politics or holding office. He does something. There's another business venture on this side.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, I know too, when I did, it always sticks in my mind because I was just like, that's really weird. When I was doing reading, or just like, I think it was on Thursday Night Live, and I all of a sudden mentioned his name, and on my security camera, the orbs just went berserk at the mention of his name. So I was like, oh, that's very interesting. So we shall see what's going to come of him. But I think he's just kind of he's going to have a lot of positive impact for the country with whatever he's doing. He's a smart guy. All right.
I had a friend of mine ask me if we could ask Andre if he saw anything negative about Putin's chart for this week, next week. Withdrawal of, is it hard, tough? Is it icky, good?
Well, yeah, that's a great question.
I don't know about this week, next week. Well, it's not great. Okay, first of all, he's full of Libra planets. So Mars going through Cancer right now, it isn't good. So, but that's been the case already for a while. It'll just keep extending into at least the middle of the month and beyond until Saturn gets out of Cancer. But the overall tenor of that chart is not good because the big cycles are all really problematic. And the worst part is the health patterns. There's an angle in astrology that I've studied a lot when planets are 150 degrees apart from each other, and it's just all over the place in this chart, multiple planets doing that, and it's not good. That's not good. So these rumors that I keep hearing that there's something wrong with his health are probably true. And if they're true, he's got a problem on that, because there's no worse problem than that.
Yeah.
Nothing can be more problematic than that. If something is already developed, for example, like where people have said maybe he has cancer or Parkinson's, that would be a very serious problem, and also would have contributed to his horrifically bad judgment that he's been involved in, or has practiced, so to speak, for the last couple of years. Because before that, he seemed more on the ball, and then suddenly he just the pandemic. I mean, something went wrong there, and
Yeah.
we lost it. So, but I don't know about next week. Why are you asking that for next week? Are you anticipating something?
Just about the Wagner Group threatening if they don't get more ammunition, they're going to retreat or pull out, or they're not going to go forward. That's that the Wagner Group is a group that he hired to make big attacks or strikes against Ukraine. And
Yeah, I thought I heard. Didn't I read somewhere that they abandoned some area that they couldn't
we don't
hold?
know. I'm not aware.
Yeah,
Because I read on them Thursday, and I said that I saw them disintegrating, dissipating. So, but yeah, go ahead, Andre. Sorry.
no, just that the pattern is the overall pattern is really bad, and then the one thing I've said for a while is that the Jupiter cycle starts mid-May for a year. That's a change worldwide, and it'll affect him, and I don't think in a good way. There's where you start to get the heavier payback on the previous Jupiter cycle, which was for him an overexpansion. He went too far with the energy, and so then it starts to come back as a problem. So, but I don't know. I mean, the thing around where people ask, will the Ukrainians, throw them out of everywhere? That I don't know. It's not clear to me. If that's the case, I think it's going to take longer. I don't think that's going to happen immediately. Which, by the way, makes sense because everything I read pretty much says that that's the way it is. You can't just throw all the equipment and everything and expect to get the Russians out.
Right. And I did see him making a major misstep this month. So there's something coming this month. I guess I guess that would be the next week or two. But yeah, this in the month of May. Thank you, Elizabeth Fuller, and thank you, Susie, and thank you, Susie, and Firefly. Thank you, Firefly. What did you get anything, Lori, on Putin this in the next couple weeks?
I didn't look. I was just
let's look, and that will be our final little thing here for
how does Putin do in the next couple weeks?
Yeah, maybe in the next week or two. I don't know what the misstep is, but it feels like the whole world is just like wrong on top of him, very upset with him. So.
I don't think it goes well.
Okay.
It looks like it's really rough.
Something's going on, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's really feeling it. And it's not stable. Really, just really very, very difficult. Big struggle.
Okay. Well, something's coming with Putin. Well, you guys, thank you so much for doing this on the middle of a Saturday. It was so fun. I could talk to you guys for another 2 hours, 3 hours. Just keep coming up with question after question. Thank you so much for doing this. I just had a blast. And thank you, everybody, for coming. Anything you guys want to talk about that's coming up on your channels?
Nothing special for me.
Astrology?
I mean, I cover the astrology constantly, so
right.
Let's see me on the channel, hear the latest.
And that's Astrology Alert for people that don't know. And Astrology Alert, I'll put these in the description so you can find them. And Lori, anything coming up on your channel?
I have readings available. If you'd like to look at the rest of your 2023, you can go to thewayofpositivechange.com, and it's very user-friendly. Just go to the book an appointment, and it'll prompt you through.
Yeah, same with me. If you want your astrology chart, set it up, and we'll talk.
Awesome. Do you have a website, Andre, or is it just through your channel?
Well, yeah, I do have a website, but you can see the website in my channel if you go to the about that cycle through. It's myname.com, and
okay.
Link.
Mm-hmm. I'll link your channels and I'll link your websites down below so people can find you guys. And thank you so much, you guys, for taking the time today. And we'll have to do this again because it was a blast. All right. All right, you guys. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody. Have a great
Everyone.
weekend. See you soon.